All right. Looks like we are up. Welcome to AAC in the Cloud. Today, we are going to talk about some case studies, and we have quite a few presenters. So I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. We're the assistive technology team from Blythedale Children's Hospital. We're located in New York, about half an hour north of New York City. And Blythedale is a subacute rehab facility. So we have inpatients, we have a day hospital school program, we have a long-term care facility, and we see outpatients. So we do a little bit of everything here. And today you're going to hear from our AT team, which I'm going to introduce now. I'm Marnina, and I am a speech language pathologist, and I do AAC. Karen Conti is here. She's a PT who does the seating and mobility. We have Barb Donleavy-Hiller, who's an OT who does the seating and mobility. Jean-Marie Florkowski, the OT who does alternate access. Andres Guerrero, who's our rehab engineer. And Marisa Portanova, who is the other SLP who does AAC together with me. So our learning objectives for today, you see they're here. One is to describe the different areas of AT for assessment and implementation. Two is to identify interdisciplinary roles of the AT team members. And three is to discuss the clinical application of various AT technologies through case studies. And today we're going to explore two case studies. But before we start, we just wanted to give this disclaimer. We work with a medically fragile and complex communication population, complex communicators. So we just wanted to know you to all know that both of the children featured in our videos today and their parents have been consented to being recording. But even so, we have blurred or covered their faces, and we will not use their names when discussing them or their information, and we thank them and their families for their time. Without our patients, we wouldn't be able to do what we do and what we love doing. So obviously we can't thank them enough. So before we dive into the case studies, we just wanted to do a brief overview about our interdisciplinary approach. So and the interdisciplinary approach in general. So the success of matching AT with the needs is strongly affected by the evaluation protocol and the skill set of the interdisciplinary team. And the utilization of an interdisciplinary approach fosters inquiry, problem solving, and learning from the team members, which allows for greater quality and outcomes within the AT service and delivery. We all come with our little bit of expertise, but it's the working together that really makes it effective. And it's our team approach as a whole that helps us get our patients the best outcomes. So again, just an overview about the quality of service. So AT assessments are conducted by a team with the collective knowledge and skills needed to determine possible assistive technology solutions that address the needs and abilities of the clients, demands of the environment, and the functional goals. And this just, we thought, sums it up so nicely about what we're aiming to do. And another overview in the collaborative model, all members of the team should contribute their talents to make the process work. At various times during the process, the emphasis may be heavier on one member or another. Yet, when information is discussed, each member should be present so the balance is created to focus on the purpose of the AT process. And we see this all the time. It might start relating to an AAC device, but without proper positioning and mounting and access, we would be nowhere. So it's definitely just, we like the points these bring home about the importance of the team and the collaboration. And again, the goals of the collaboration, so the outcomes for us as team members using an interdisciplinary approach includes it reaffirms our decision-making, it organizes information in a comprehensive manner, it broadens the interprofessional competencies of all the team members, and it provides a single point of contact for the family to bring questions about any of the various areas. So today we're going to look at our case studies from these four approaches, from the seating and mobility, the rehab engineering, the access and adaptations, and the AAC. And you're going to hear from each of our professionals and how the interdisciplinary work came together to do the best for our patients. So I'm going to pass it on to Marisa.
Hi, I'm Marisa. I am the speech language pathologist that will be discussing the AAC journey for our case study 1. So here we have a 6-year, 1-month-old male child who was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. He came to Blythedale about a year ago with his own personal Tobii Dynavox i13, which he accessed through iGaze. He attends our school day hospital program, and he also came in with a personal stroller and a table mount for his speech generating device. He receives speech therapy here 2 times a week individually and 1 time a week in a group with other AAC users. He uses TD Snap Core First with a grid size of 3x4. He was navigating pages independently via iGaze for a variety of communicative functions and spelling out words on his keyboard page. Later on, we'll have a video of how he accesses his iGaze device. This kiddo prefers verbal communication. However, he presents with reduced speech intelligibility and relies on his personal speech generating device to help fix communication breakdowns. We ran into some barriers with difficulty accessing device due to his poor positioning in his stroller. And that's where we consulted his occupational therapist and physical therapist, who helped with trialing out a manual wheelchair to improve his positioning, to optimize his access of his iGaze device. We trained the classroom staff on how to position and set him up in the wheelchair, set up his table mount, and position his iGaze device for optimal access to improve his participation in the classroom setting with his device. This just was a really great example about how collaboration amongst occupational therapy, physical, and speech really helped this kiddo with his assistive technology and integrating it into his everyday life, especially in his academic setting. His mother and father were super happy with the increased use of his speech generating device. This was a really positive outcome. He began using his device to complete homework online. He also started getting onto the internet and doing some online shopping with iGaze. So that was really neat. And as time progressed, he started to become actually less interested in using his personal device. He shut down, he wasn't as motivated, and we weren't sure why. Despite having other peers modeling their AAC use, he just didn't seem as into it anymore. And he reported that the device was blocking his view of his friends and his classmate and just what was going on in his environment. Now, as SLP, it was kind of frustrating because he was so efficient as an iGaze user, but in collaborating with his occupational therapist, we saw his potential with accessing a keyboard on an iPad, making choices from a field of 2 with touch. And then we decided, let's try his personal communication page on an iPad. So we downloaded his same communication pages onto the iPad, and we consulted our rehab engineer who created a key guard. And we played around with dwell times, and with a dwell time of 0.5 seconds, he was successful in touching and navigating, and he took off like a rock star, and he was the leader of his journey at that point. And we were just there to support him and optimize his communication as best we could. So the collaboration again and brainstorming to maximize his potential was just really, really powerful in this child's journey. Occupational therapy helped with the placement of his device. So as you can see in this picture, he's in his power chair and the device is positioned on the right side of his lap tray. And he uses touch to navigate the screen, which we'll see in a video coming up. Actually, we can play those now. We can go to the next slide. So here is the video of him accessing his iGaze device on a table mount while he's in a wheelchair.
Can you show us how? Something is wrong. I think it's in your dashboard, which you can access on this side of the screen.
You want Marisa to show you how to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, so look.
Can you show me you're thinking about your talker? Okay, so we're gonna go down, down, and there's our dashboard. Oh, you're paused. That's silly. Yeah, dashboard. And then let's put the volume down.
So in this video, we were working on operational use of the device, and with visual and verbal cues, he was successful in learning how to control the volume of his talker. We have a second video showing how he's participating in a game of headbands using his now touch as an access method with the iPad.
We'll go back up to toys and games. Mhm. There you go.
Headbands.
Awesome. Okay, what's your question?
And there's one in the bottom, right?
Can I eat?
Mhm. Scroll down, is that what you said? Oh, are you asking? Yes, you would scroll down on this page. It's on this page, yeah? Animal, yep, you are an animal. Good job using this page for categories. Open up your animal page.
So that's a great video because it shows how he's using his verbal communication, but using his device to help assist his his expressive language to participate in this fun game. So now I'm going to pass it on to our occupational therapist, Barbara, who's going to discuss mobility. And as you'll see in this video, oh, well, I'll have her talk about this first.
Thanks, Marisa.
No problem.
So as Marisa mentioned, this student that came to us came without any means of independent mobility and was trying to integrate his existing communication access in his day. So what we did is the primary treatment team saw what positioning needs he had. They collaborated with the service that we have that we offer for consultation. And this video is showing after we looked at his positioning and looked at the fact that he would be a candidate for power mobility, we collaborated with the speech language pathologist and the occupational therapist to ask about access. He is a multiple access user. So he did, as you see, the direct access with touch as well as eye gaze. So with this, we were looking at addressing his positioning needs. And we could play the video one more time if it works, so that you could see. We used head access for this mobility. And what this is it's a dual force sensitive head array that allows the child to put pressure on the switches that are on the left and the right and behind him. And he's at the point in this video that he's exploring his environment under more of a natural setting. So there's a few environmental obstacles that are moving, some that are static. He's starting to communicate within his environment while he's driving and coming up to his peers, looking, stopping when he sees there's something in his way, and then venturing on. So this is part of the puzzle that we were trying to put together as a team to look at access for function, looking at the communication in all environments rather than just being static within the classroom environment. So the next video that we'll be looking at is showing how do we empower communication across all its settings and environment. So this is a video showing the therapist trying to set up a low distractor environment, but something that's going to show us how do we promote mounting of the communication system on the mobility device while ensuring safety of the device, knowing that it's within the footprint, looking at obstacles at a typical setting, which would be the table height and things like that. So we could play the video one more time and I could talk through that. In this setting, we tried to really listen to the child saying that he did not want to be hidden behind the communication device, but he did want to communicate with his peers and his family as well as the daytime school staff. So this was something that led to putting another piece of the puzzle together. And we're at the point where the next stage in his journey is pursuing personal devices. So as the speech language pathologist, the occupational therapist, and the PT came together, after supporting them with our collaboration, they worked with the family and pursued requesting personal devices so that they can take this, as he will, in his long-term goal, be transitioning from our programming to a school district. So this is just how we try to enable and empower the children, as one case study. And at that point, what I would love to do is pass it over to Marnina again, and she will start the next case study.
Okay, so
I
this,
think
yeah, go ahead.
before we start this case study, it looks like we have a couple questions in the chat. Can you guys see those?
No,
No,
Okay, the first one says, who selected the eye gaze device?
So he already came in with that, so he was receiving speech therapy prior to us. So I'm guessing his last speech therapist and mom, because it was very customized. So that was already chosen before he came to us.
It's still appropriate.
And it was
No,
still
was fine.
appropriate when we met him. It was over the course of the school year that he really evolved and wanted to practice touch and realize he was successful with it and take off with that. And eye gaze is still appropriate for him as a maybe backup method. When touch is too fatiguing and vice versa, eye gaze is also very fatiguing, and then he can then use touch. So throughout his life, the parents would love him to be able to access communication multimodally. So it's nice that we can help him access communication both ways.
Okay, I think you sort of answered the question. Does he use eye gaze while he's on the move, or is this before he pivoted to touch access?
That was before he pivoted to touch access. So now we're going to explore mounting a device where he can touch while being in his power chair. So, and he's still young, so learning to navigate his, being mobile in his chair, and then obviously pausing so that we're not super distracted to then communicate. So trying to work out where he can be in the hallway, navigating his environment, stopping, maybe engaging with a peer with his device via touch, and then resuming driving when it's safe again.
Okay, and then we have another question. Did you say he uses his head to control the wheelchair? They want to know more about that.
okay. Yes, that is a mode of access to control the power wheelchair. So the therapist, upon meeting the child, looked at all traditional drive controls, which are typically a joystick and hand-based drive. And it was just too fatiguing, even though he did have the capability for a short period of time to access a joystick. So as Marisa mentioned, his diagnosis is cerebral palsy and impacts his postural control over time. So the goals were to enable him to be mobile, as well as give him postural support to minimize fatigue. So he's in a tilt and space power chair with postural supports, and the head drive array is a proportionate drive array that, as you touch the switches that are embedded in the pad behind his head and to the left and right of his head, it will operate the forward, the left turn, the right turn, so that he can navigate using that point of control. And what they found is, through repetition training, his posture had improved, because having to use your head as the actual access method, you can't lean down, whereas when he was using his joystick, he was looking down at his hand and using that, so it wasn't as efficient. And over time, it just gives him one more point of control as access, but it isn't necessary for him to use that to access his communication device. So he's great in that, given the variety of access methods, it builds in flexibility, because as we said, he's 6 years old, and even the mounts and the capability of the power, we have to think ahead a few years so that we could modify it as he changes.
All right, well, thank you for that. No more questions, so we'll move on to case study number 2.
Okay, so case study number 2 is an 11-year-old boy with a diagnosis of congenital myopathy. He is nonverbal. He has very little volitional movement of his body. He is trached on a ventilator and has a G-tube. He does have a little bit of head movement for nodding, but those are not always consistent, also just based on the day he's having and his overall medical status. He came to us through our outpatient assistive technology clinic. he was getting all his services at home. So he was getting therapy and school-based services at home. And the school district had been using an iPad with Proloquo to Go and using his hands to access it, but it was very, very difficult for him. And really, he could only access the buttons that were very close to wherever his hands was placed on the iPad. His family was hoping that we could figure out other ways to give him more communication and more interaction. He's a very smart, very social boy, who had really only had interaction with his siblings and family members. Due to his medical status, they were worried about keeping him safe from germs, but definitely knew that there was more in there than he was able to demonstrate and wanted to figure out a better way of communication for him. So because of his limited movement throughout his body, we looked at eye gaze and a head mouse, but because of the very limited movements, the eye gaze was easier for him. We were not able to find 2 access points to be able to do 2-switch scanning. So we really started with the eye gaze as the way to go. So you see here, he has a personal Tobii i13 with TD Snap. He's using the Motor Plan 30 page set. It's mounted to his chair. When he came to us, we tried the eye gaze options, but we weren't sure the way to go, and we convinced the family to have him come to us just for summer program, which runs for 6 weeks during the summer, and the family agreed. And then they saw how well he was doing in school with his peers, with the classwork, that they agreed to let him stay on. And it's really just been such an amazing growth experience for him. He's reading and writing and spelling and loves the interaction with his peers. I mean, is a typical 11-year-old who loves video games and Marvel and superheroes, and just the interaction he's getting in school now has really been invaluable. So in the next, here you'll see a video of him using his eye gaze device.
Oh. Good. And now it's going in the back. Good. Oh, you're right there. You're right there. Awesome. Tell them the whole thing.
So this, we were in a group setting. We were engaged in an activity, a describing game. Everybody in the group had a different feature to describe, and that somebody was going to guess what the picture was. And to be honest, this was early on. I mean, you can still see the plastic covering on his device. So it was just showing him where the vocabulary is and teaching him where through showing and demonstrating that he really was just taking off and starting to use the device on his own. But being a preteen and having days where, medically it's up and down, there are days he doesn't want to use his eye gaze. He has days where his eyes are very teary. It's harder for him. He's just a teenager. He doesn't want to do it, a preteen. So working together with OT, we tried to figure out some other options.
So I'm just gonna kind of piggyback on that one in regards to him starting the program. It was very beneficial actually for the team members, because we got a glimpse into what his motor potential was. He was very reluctant to kind of show his movements because they're very small, and in his past experience, they weren't very functional. So we had to tie in a little bit of function for him, and then that kind of opened him up to showing us what his motor skills were. So he does have a little bit of movement of his right thumb, a little bit in his left, but his right is stronger and more consistent. And with showing us a little bit more of his motor skills, it made us realize he's a candidate for other modes of access. And you're excited about that because it can be a backup system, like Marnina said, to his eye gaze system, but it also can show him even his little movements can do big things. And that's what you want to do for especially somebody his age, really give him the self-esteem of him being able to control different things in his world. So when he came to program, we trialed a lot of different things, from switches to Bluetooth mice, and really kind of ended up with a great match of, in this picture, you'll see the Apple Magic Pad. And it was just a good match for him because it required very low pressure of his thumb in moving and tapping. And as you can see, you can kind of maneuver it and position it in different ways that's optimal to the user. But knowing that we knew it was going to be a great device, I think the team here even knows it's not just crucial to look at the positioning of the child, but you really want to look at the positioning of the device as well. So in the upper left side, you'll see there's a bunch of foam pieces during our assessment to see what is the right angle that we want for him and the positioning. And then once we had that set, we kind of collaborated with the rehab engineer, Andres, who kind of helped us create a 3D customized adjustable stand for it so that the positioning is more consistent throughout the day, no matter who helps kind of set him up for the day. The picture to the right, you can see he's able to access both his eye gaze as well as use that trackpad, magic pad on an iPad. And it's really his personal goal from the get-go was consistently that he wanted to be able to, access and search the internet and watch YouTube videos. I mean, it's completely age appropriate, and he always had to wait for somebody else to, help him out. So our goal was to really kind of give him that independence. So we have a few videos of him using that. So the first video is of him using it just to type along with the pointer control settings in the actual iPad accessibility features. You can change the size of the dot. He prefers a larger dot so he could see it, and you can change the color of that outline of the dot. His favorite color is red. That's the only reason why we chose it. And as Marnina mentioned, he really is very quick cognitively to pick up on things. Word prediction he picked up very, very quickly. But you can see he can tap, he can move, he can go across the screen, but his movement of his thumb doesn't have to be very, very large for him to access all points of the screen. The next picture you see on the right, or video, is just another setting we use too. It's assistive touch menu. It's another one that's also in the accessibility features of the iPad. And what that does is it allows him to use a scroll function, a click and drag, which you saw in this video, of just giving him another level of control in just using the accessibility features of the iPad themselves. With increasing his access and his modes of access, he sort of was a little bit more willing to try things that he was resistant to in the past. And with that came his willingness to trial adaptive gaming and paramobility. So our rehab engineer, Andres, is going to,
I just wanted to add the advantage of using, when he uses the iPad, we can also put the same TD Snap software on the iPad. So he only has to learn one vocabulary, but he has access to it both with eye gaze and through the Magic Trackpad.
So Andres is going to go over a little bit of his journey in adaptive gaming.
So yes, I started working with this kid with his OT. It was more about trying to find a way to access to his Magic iPad that really he used more for access. But we were like, okay, we can also give them the opportunity to play video games as well. So when we were working on this device, I figured out like he has more movement on his right arm. So why not just doing more than just a couple of switch? Let's try to see if he can do some joystick as well. So in this case, we are using for gaming the Nintendo Switch combined with the Xbox adaptive controller. So with this combination, we were able to try different kind of switches, different kind of joysticks, so we can try different combinations using the switches that already come with the Xbox adaptive controller, and we use for the joystick the RJ Cooper. We first tried with the different commercial available handles, but when we decided he will need something more customized for his hand and positioning, that's when I 3D print a custom handle using a more rubber-like material where he can rest his hand, and with enough support on his elbow, he was able to move to the left or right of the joystick. That was enough to control the steering of the cart in this game. I also incorporate a switch on the side, as you can see on the picture on the left, that he can press using his thumb. And in this case, it was used to the powers of the character, while we connect a different switch on his headrest, so he's able to actually accelerate. In this case, we select the Nintendo Switch and the Mario Kart specifically because it's a great game that comes with some functions for accessibility, just like the smart acceleration and the smart steering. These two combined could give a user that just use one single switch to actually play the whole video game. In his case, we just have it the smart steering. So he can actually control basically the whole character by itself, but he can be helped by the game to keep the car in the middle. So as we can see on the next video. So you can see he's using his head to accelerate, and he make like a right turn with the joystick. So the game basically using the smart steering feature push him back to the center of the track, so he doesn't have like that frustration, and he didn't need to like add a lot of control. So this helped him a lot at the beginning. So he tried the first time with this combination, and then he started winning every single race he was playing. So we definitely decided, okay, so he's doing really great with this kind of combination. Why not trying him on a power wheelchair as well? So Karen is going to help us also with that part.
Yes, we have seen him in our seating and mobility clinic. And he is, like Marnina said, he is now coming to our day hospital program. I was asked to assess his seating to help with some of his access. And as I was assessing his seating, I saw that he had wonderful access capability. And I was pleasantly surprised with some of the things that he was doing. So at this point, we decided we were going to try him in a power wheelchair. We put him in a mid-wheel power wheelchair. We used a micro-light switch joystick, which he was able to navigate with his right thumb. And again, we have to remember that he has limited movement and he fatigues very quickly. So we wanted to make it successful, and we wanted to make this an enjoyable experience in the beginning. And he did wind up loving it. And I think he does enjoy being in the power chair. So much that sometimes he wants to go to his own place. You know, he has his own desires of where he wants to drive and what he wants to see, which is also very nice for someone who's never had any independent mobility to first have this independent mobility and to go wherever they want to go. We've now changed his ability to access the joystick with like a little thumb cup. So that allows him, again, to navigate the wheelchair very successfully, a little less effort. And if his thumb falls off, he doesn't have to replace it. And his driving skill is very good. You can definitely see that. So he has come a long way. We've spoken to his parents, and we are looking into getting one for him to his own personal to use at home. And here you can see that there is a group of our kids. Some of them were in our presentation today. They are all sitting in their, mobility device, and they're all using their access device to play a game and interact with one another, and promoting, good socialization. All right.
Yeah, it's not just the academic work and the communication, but really about the peer relationships, the developing friendships, making, if not for our team approach, we wouldn't be able to make it so easy for them to have these successful opportunities. And that's what it's all about. We want them to know that they can be positioned well so that access is easy and communication is easy, and they can have those social interactions, which a lot of them have never had. And this group especially, having other users using AAC devices has been so motivating for the kids. Most of them are with typical peers or classmates who are verbal, and seeing other children who are using similar modes of communication as they do is really, really motivating to participate, get competitive, have fun, develop friendships. So it's really been great. Before we proceed to our last few slides, are there any questions?
Yes, we have some.
Perfect.
Question 1, does he have any speech or vocalizations?
No.
None.
He's not able to, he's trached and on a ventilator, and he's not able to produce any voicing around or above the trach. So no, he will, when he gets upset, you'll see tears, and he will shake his head, but there is no voicing.
And he has a hard time making facial gestures or using the, the muscles within his face as well as his oral.
Yeah, I was gonna say very flat affect, difficulty controlling his oral secretions. Yeah, there's no vocalization or like attempt to mouth words at all.
Okay. Question number 2, are you using an adapter to connect the Xbox controller to the switch?
So this, do you want to take this one? I'm answering.
Yes, you can.
Sorry.
Yes, you can get an adapter. Basically, on Amazon, I don't remember exactly the brand. Do you remember what one?
There's a few brands. So
Yeah,
There's a switch. The switch goes right directly into the Xbox controller. We just had to buy a little dongle to attach to the Nintendo Switch to make it understand the Xbox controller. And those are
Yes.
buy on Amazon.
Yes, basically, we'll need to have a dongle that is compatible with an Xbox controller. Not necessarily the Xbox adaptive controller, but any Xbox controller. So you need that communication between the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox. Normally, it's basically just like a USB that you plug directly between the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox adaptive controller.
All right. Next one is, what is the name of the joystick and where would I find the thumb cups?
The name of the joystick is, it is a Switch It Microlight joystick. We are very fortunate to have Andreas here because with his 3D printer, he actually made a thumb cup for us.
Yeah, like when I did that, is basically it's total custom for him. So it's not something that you can find available anywhere, unfortunately. But again, that is something that is exactly for him. So for the other kids, for other people, it will be needed to go through a process to see first if there's anything commercially available that he can use. If not, then it will be a matter of trying to figure out how to make something for that person.
And just to add, with the Switch It Microlight and their other adaptive joysticks that bypass the standard joystick drive control, that one specific joystick gives you some, they call them joystick handles. So it comes off the post of the joystick. So there is one that is concave, that sometimes an individual can put the tip of their finger in and it gives them a little bit more stability. But for something more customized, we reverted to the manufacturer and our access to Andres as a rehab engineer, because if you do put something too custom and you try your best, sometimes the weight and the force applied to the joystick can break the joystick. So there's a play there too, trying to figure out what we need as therapists and what we want to develop, and then working with the manufacturer on what can be put onto the joystick. And we were, like we said, very fortunate to have Andres 3D print that.
All right. I love how you guys are being so creative. The next question is, how long are your group sessions and how long does it take to set up or get the students ready?
That's a good question.
Good question, yeah.
They're never long enough
No.
because especially with a group where they're all using AAC, it takes time to get them all set up. We generally, most of our sessions are half hour, but for the groups, we try to do 45 minutes.
Takes time to get them there, set up their devices on their mounts.
Right, especially the new power chair
Yeah.
drivers. It's not speedy getting down from the classroom to the group room. Which is great. I mean, we want them to have that time to explore. Sometimes that's all we talk about during group is who they saw on the way, what they saw on the way, you know, what everybody's doing, that kind of thing. But yeah, longer would be ideal. It's just, as I'm sure you know, as a speech therapist, the scheduling is always hard, but we try to allow for 45 minutes for the group as opposed to half hour.
Okay, one other question. What is the name of the rocking joystick for gaming?
The joystick we used was an RJ Cooper.
And so the RJ Cooper, if you go on it, it's non-proportional, right, for that one? But-
No, it's non-proportional, and also it could be used as a mouse as well
Right,
for
so
computers, so
it
it has its own
comes-
functions.
It's a joystick, but then it comes with two things to attach it to. One, written would be for gaming, and one is for mouse function. So you just have to decide which, mode that you're going to go in and make sure you connect the right connector to it. But it is RJ Cooper, is that one.
All right, it looks like that's all the questions that we have in the chat for now, so you guys can go ahead.
Okay, so we just wanted to again bring up this graphic because without a doubt it's the teamwork and the collaboration that really makes this successful. And like you mentioned, the problem solving, I think we all work off of each other. Is I need something for this, what do you think about this? And that's really what enables us to give our patients the most success, is having the collaboration and the teamwork and the ability to work together, learn off of each other, and the kids learning from each other as well. I mean, there's nothing like watching the kids in the group communicate for the first time to each other and participate in a typical age-appropriate activity. So we love this graphic, and without a doubt, this is how we work, definitely together as puzzle pieces as a team.
And as some of the questions were pertaining to the products that we showed in the case studies, that's another advantage that we do have because we're an established program. So we have access to the manufacturer's demos. So a lot of it is the collaboration, like Marnina's saying, in the different areas. We have different contacts, and it might take a little while, but we get creative and we say, who could we call to get this product? And we do have that advantage because we're a known center. And we do acknowledge that a lot of therapists that are working out in different environments and settings may or may not have that access. So that's something that in a moment we'll have a few slides, just because that's something that we love to problem solve with people outside and try to help, because we realize that we have a strong advantage of the access for that.
Right, and just to add, today, both case studies that we featured were using Tobii Dynavox systems, but that is not exclusively what we use. We work with all the companies, all the vendors. We have multiple devices here on site and relationships with all the companies and the vendors to be able to borrow things and try different things for our patients and figure out what works the best for them. So here's our contact information. We have 2 different phone numbers and email addresses. Tracy French is our AT coordinator. We're fortunate to have the administrative support for that. So for AAC and Access, you see there's 1 number and 1 email address. And for seating and mobility, there's a separate one. And like Barb mentioned, we love to problem solve. So if you want more information about anything we spoke about today, definitely be in touch. But also you have a case that you're having a hard time with, you want to problem solve, you want to troubleshoot, we are more than happy to kind of put our brains together and our team approach together to try to problem solve and help. So we wanted to make sure you all had easy access to our contact information. And these are just our references. And we left some time for questions, which I feel like we've answered as we have gone along. But if there are more questions, I feel like we talked quickly. But if anybody has anything else to add or other questions, we are happy to answer.
The handouts, did you guys send those in? Or they attached to your presentation, I believe?
I think they are, but if not, we can resend them.
All right.
Yeah.
I will post the link to that.
Perfect. Thank you.
And let's see, I'm waiting to see if we have any more additional questions. Someone said, have you ever had to build a switch from scratch for a student?
I have to know. Because yeah, we already, as I say, like we work a lot with different manufacturers, and there's a lot of different switches that we have access depending on the needs of the patient. But if you are interested to actually build your switch from scratch, we have actually some STL files, so you can 3D print your own switch on our website. If you go to our Blydell Children's Hospital website and end up going to the rehabilitation, to the assistive technology team, you will find my profile there with the name Andres Guerrero, and then you can find like the documents. And I can provide also the link at the end or in the handouts,
Sure.
so you can access. You have like a manual and the files. If you have a 3D printer, you can basically build a switch from scratch.
And I know some of the switches tend to be expensive. But if there's a lot of other gaming companies that are starting to put out their own switches, which makes it actually a little bit cheaper. So Logitech is one of the companies that have switch bundles. So you might be able to look there to get kind of a cheaper, if you're on like a different budget, because I know some of the adaptive switches can be a little bit pricey sometimes.
Looks like we have another question. Do you have an idea for a double switch access for a student using a laying down seating bed?
That's a hard one.
A laying down
A-
seating bed.
Is the child in a sitting position and tilted all the way back, or are they actually lying in a bed? Is it a hospital bed?
To access what kind of device as well?
Yeah, and what are they trying to access?
She said, currently I use 2-button switch, sponges on either side of his head attached to a cardboard pillow that slides down the back of head. Then he turns left and right to access switches. The achiever bed is slightly sitting up.
Do you guys know any other mounts that?
Well, what about the modular hose? You
Right.
can hook it up.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, the modular
the
hose.
modular hose might be more adjustable.
Yeah.
You don't know how, it's hard because you don't know how much, like if the person has a very limited movement, how much pressure that they apply to the switch. But sometimes the modular mounts, you can kind of create your own layout and system of the mount. You can take pieces off, add them, and they are adjustable. The tube is actually very adjustable if you wanted to do that on either side. That might be something
Yeah.
worth exploring.
And can you put any switch on there? So it can be a very lightweight
Yeah,
switch.
so there's
Yeah.
different plates that attach to it. And you can attach whatever plate you might need, you can attach the switch to it. But if you go onto their website, you can take a look at that, and it's called modular hose.
Thank you. And she said that she's going to email you guys privately and send some photos.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
All right. Well, it looks like those are all the questions. Oh, we have one more. Have you ever had success with eye blinks as an access method?
I've not personally have used it.
Yeah.
Oh,
One
yeah.
time, yeah.
Yeah.
I think and I'm not speaking for all of us, but I have noticed that I've had experience with one person using iBlink and it was very successful. But I almost feel like, as we mentioned before, we try to actively involve the user into our decision making. And I feel like that is one area, especially like the blink versus dwell. It's really a user preference and kind of engaging them more versus us deciding on that preference. Would you agree on?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I haven't had success with somebody using a high-tech device, but we've used it as an access method with like a pod book system as a yes/no response. So I've had luck with that, but I have never personally had success using a high-tech device.
All right. Well, it looks like those are all the questions. So I appreciate you guys presenting today. And if you guys have any additional questions for them, they listed their contact information. Feel free to reach out. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.